Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today's a fireside chat on 5G and connectivity. With me, I've got Paul Scanlan out of Huawei. Paul, 5G. You're probably seeing more of it in Malaysia than we are in the U.S. What's the big improvement that people are seeing once it's been deployed?
I always like to think about 5G. I keep branding this slogan, but I believe it's a platform for transformation. Yeah. And maybe I'll answer your question in this sort of anecdotal way.
Sure.
But 4 years ago, we were building up 5G and saying, it's going to be faster and lower latency and millions of connections. That's the sort of the
performance
concept,
at the edge and all that other stuff.
Yeah. And you think it's going to be all this, yeah. But then I hired a bunch of consultants in Europe. Because the Europeans were underinvesting, right? They just couldn't see, how do I monetize speed? Yeah.
Right.
So let's roll forward a couple of years, and suddenly you find just about everybody's deploying 5G in some form. Yeah. Obviously, Korea's really done a lot. Yes.
Yes.
And so too is China. Yeah. And if you look at what LGU Plus's strategy was back in the 4G era and 4.5, 4.x G, they understood how to monetize video. Yeah, now, I think that's very important for everybody to understand, Rob. Yeah. So if we now look at, and in fact, I'm heading back to China. I've just been over here with my family for a few weeks tomorrow. So I'm going back to China. And in China, when I was there I was there during the pandemic, the entire pandemic. So I was there from end of February. Yeah? And I had a 5G handset, which I had the year before. And I suddenly noticed that everything was on steroids, quite frankly, right? Everything was on steroids.
What do you mean?
I went from 50 megs to 300.
Oh, wow.
But what I really noticed were any content, because I was in China, any content that was in China, 50 meg file, 100 meg file, 3 seconds, finished.
Wow.
Yeah? I mean, it was really, I can't say anything other than it felt like it was on steroids. Yeah. But really what I also noticed was things like video, especially, video conferencing, video telephony became, as you know, prevalent here because of COVID. And I think being in China and in Asia, you got to see a lot of that. And that's probably what, most of the listeners here would be wanting to know, is it really that good? And yes, it is that good.
So it could really help you if you're doing something like trying to live stream an event with your phone or capture a news event or whatever. It would be it's a much better experience.
It is. We did some pilots in Europe, specifically with in the UK, BBC, and we were just putting a 5G chip. Mm-hmm. Initially, they have big 4K cameras, and as you know, it goes through a cable, usually back to the truck, and then uplinked by satellite, back to the studio.
Sure.
That's sort of traditionally how they run 4K videos, live streaming at sports events and things like that. Well, what we did is we fitted a 5G interface to it, so it just goes straight back to the studio. And we demonstrated this across multiple scenarios, and that really demonstrates the power of content video. Yeah, which I mean that's what you're doing now, right? You're sending me a stream, I'm sending you a stream. We're doing Netflix, right? And I think that's the thing that's become the way life changes, because suddenly, 3G promised video telephony, and it took 4G to get it. But 4G, it does it, but 5G, I can only say it's almost like it's instant. Yes.
Well, in some of the places where they've rolled it out, it seems to be bypassing cable service and other things. Is that what you're seeing in the areas that have deployed it well, like China and South Korea?
Yes. Yeah, South Korea, not so much, because South Korea has, very, very good fixed network, and South Korea has a very good, obviously, mobile network. I don't know if you know, but in South Korea, especially the densely populated area, a typical cell tower is about, 200 meters, 120 meters to 200 meters apart. So it's really
heavy
poised.
Coverage.
Yes, it's very, very good. Yeah. So what we did in China and what Huawei has been promoting around the world is the concepts of using lampposts. So wherever you have street stations are only this big, it weighs about 20 kilos. So it's pretty straightforward to deploy it. It's lightweight. It doesn't need to go on top of the big towers. Of course, we do that. But I think in China, last count, we have about 800,000 cell sites, 5G ones.
Sure.
And the way you're able to achieve that penetration, the rollout penetration is really using a lot of the street furniture that you would not otherwise have used, say, in 4G. And that's been carried on even in places like Middle East, South Africa. These countries get, and in Asia, they just get the idea of using the street furniture. So when you do use street furniture, it brings you pretty close to all the, I'll say underserved fiber market. And of course, Verizon tried to do the same thing using, millimeter wave, but the rest of the world is really using the sub-6, 3.5 to 4.5 gig bands, so that the penetration, the spread is a lot better. But, I remember being in the US just before the pandemic in rural US, and I saw some of our similar, they were 4G, and it's a massive MIMO, so it looks very much, the hardware is very similar. And we were getting 647 megabits to rural Americans, It was over a distance of about 5 miles. Yeah, so we were getting that already. So you're right, we're using this instead of, you call it fixed wireless access, yeah? The concept's been around for about 7 or 8 years because of this massive MIMO technology.
How do you think it's going to hold up against some of the satellite stuff that's going up that Musk has thrown up for in-home entertainment?
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting sort of question, because I'm actually a satellite engineer originally when I joined Telstra, many years ago, and so we were using satellite where you couldn't provide connectivity effectively, cost effectively.
Right.
Satellite covers a broad area. Yeah? If you put up geosynchronous orbit, then of course you cover a third of the landmass, or a third of the globe. These lower Earth orbiting satellites will certainly give you a lot of coverage. And of course, the power density has improved over time, and they're much lower orbiting. So you're probably getting around 30 to 50 milliseconds delay, which is much better than 500. So it's an order of magnitude less.
Right.
But to put that in perspective, Rob, you're also getting, that's about 0.3 of a millisecond in the delay just in the air interface. Right. And their air interface is going to be 30 milliseconds. So you're starting a long way away. But, what Musk is doing and others is predominantly for the download, the video speeds. And even when I saw just now the latest launch of OneWeb, I think their speeds were 500, they were claiming. I don't know the detail, but let's take it as 500. Well, it's common in China as 300 megabits per second, and it's pretty easy to tweak that and push it up. So right. There won't be any comparison between satellite and terrestrial. There just will not be, okay, in terms of latency and others. But what it will do is it will allow you to provide, a lot of services that will be quite competitive in, the traditional sort of, streaming stuff and right. And those where 30 to 100 milliseconds is not too bad. There's a lot of scenarios for that, Rob.
Well, yeah, and I guess it's better in remote areas where they don't have much cellular infrastructure. If you're out in the Tules, the only way you've been able to connect is through something like ISDN or some of the older satellite, like the Hughes satellite stuff, which is pretty horrible. Yes,
yeah, I remember those days. Yeah, I remember the early days of ISDN. Yeah, we all thought it was, integrated services digital network. Wow, what a great! And it took years and years and years. Yes, and what did we get?
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. Well, in my own history, we were having an ongoing argument of whether Ethernet or ISDN. When I was working at Siemens, Siemens was convinced ISDN was going to be the future. And those of us in IBM had come off Token Ring and were saying, no, it's going to be Ethernet. But Siemens was absolutely firm. The future was going to be ISDN. And they didn't get that right.
It was even like RCS services, But RCS has taken a new twist now, because China's rolled it out quite aggressively. All the operators have decided to interconnect and form that up again, and they're doing a lot of interactive play. So you can be videoing, streaming, connecting to a whole bunch of things in parallel, and as a native service, right? Not as an app on top of an app or an app within an app. So as a pure native service, which makes it very, very efficient.